Oh, mute, unmute. I never know when it unmutes automatically or not, but it happened. Welcome, everyone, to the .NET Maui Community Toolkit stand-up of March 2023. We're almost all here. Jay, you know him by now. He joined us since, I don't know, a couple of months ago from the Tyson team. He just called in sick, so get well soon. I know he's not watching right now because he always gets up super early. It's like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. for him, so that's crazy. I'm still amazed that he does that. But here we are, all the rest of us. How's everyone doing? Brandon was already in the chat. Hello from Sully, California, making us jealous all the time. Stop doing that. What's up, Brandon?
Good. I actually have to close the blinds here because it's so sunny and beautiful outside. Keep me here in my dungeon. I'm feeling good, man. February was a tough month for me. I caught COVID and had that for about a week and a half at the start of February. And literally just today is the first time I'm feeling better since also catching the flu about a week ago. So hopefully no more sickness in 2023. I think I got all the antibodies now. But yeah, it feels nice to be able to move again and breathe again. So glad to be back.
Yeah. Great. That's amazing. And Sean, you were chatting with George. You're both in the UK, it seems. So it's always great there, right?
It is pretty much always great. But there was some sunshine today. Probably not as much as Brandon had, but we had some.
How are you doing, Sean? What have you been up to?
Good.
You finished your book. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I've got the proof to look through now, and once that's done, hopefully published by the end of the month.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I saw some stuff on your Twitter account. We were already talking about that. You have 2 daughters, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
And one of them, it was International Book Day, something like that. And one of them went dressed up like you to school, and you printed out the cover of your book. They had little glasses on. So, there it is. See. So
with a Hitchhiker's Guide underneath.
Oh yeah. Oh, good.
So that was quite touching. Yeah, she went dressed up as me with a using .NET Maui, Microsoft.Maui t-shirt on.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Vlad, what's up with you? How have you been keeping?
I'm fine. Today we have a night and we have a parade of planets, which we can see just right now in the sky, where we have Venus and Jupiter. They both on the same line, and we can see it in the sky. It's amazing.
Very cool. Yeah, I've saw
Where you, Gerald?
Sorry, and I think actually in the Netherlands, I think you could see like the northern light, which is like the green lights, but you have to be all the way up the north. I'm in the south, so I didn't see anything. It's dark here. I've been doing good. Thank you, Vlad. Someone finally asked. We've been doing this for a year. Someone finally asked, right? I've been doing good. Just working away at all the .NET Maui stuff, .NET Maui Community Toolkit stuff, doing some videos on YouTube. So actually nothing too exciting. I've been doing a couple of events for the past few months, being out there, meeting Sean for the first time. I think we talked about that. So just keeping busy. Just like Kim, who has been moving halfway across the world, and now just to have a different background.
Just to have a different background, and my fondue set over the side here. So enjoying a lot of fondue in Switzerland. That's what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a lot of work to just get a proper fondue, but all right. Everything went well, Kim. You're
everything went well. Yep. So settling into Geneva and moved the whole family and put them all into school, and all that sort of carry on. It's a lot. It makes me think back to the days when I could just travel by myself, and how smooth that was.
That was, I mean, Kim, you're 25, right? So that wasn't too long ago. Come on.
Close to 30, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, Pedro, talking about sunshine. Pedro, what's up with you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Just recovering from a flu, but it's pretty better now.
Great. That's good to hear. Well, let's just dive right into the announcement, and I'm going to shuffle with the order here a little bit that I see in my show notes, because Pedro, what's up? What are you doing?
Yep. So I am leaving the community toolkit as a core team maintainer, but I pretend to still be a contributor on that. But outside, I believe it's a good opportunity to bring new people to the team
Absolutely.
and new visions, and to me to take some vacation as well. Like I pretended to travel a little bit, so I will not have too much time to contribute to the project as a core maintainer should do. So it's not easy to leave, but I believe it's the best option for the team in the role because we can add
Yeah, sure.
someone.
Absolutely. Well, I'm saying sure, like, yeah, go away. That's absolutely not what I mean. And I mean, I joke about it, but we're of course sad that you're leaving, Pedro. But as we've mentioned many times before, this is the community toolkit. We're all doing this in our own time. It's like, I don't know, what time is it? 9 p.m. here. So, it's well past bedtime and I'm still here. So that's definitely also what you've been doing, Pedro. You've been putting in a lot of time and effort in this. So thank you so much for all that you've been doing. And of course, good luck on everything that you're about to do. We hope that you can still contribute in some time that you still have, or maybe come back at a later stage whenever you've done visiting all of us, because that was the plan, right? Traveling to all of us. So you've done amazing. Thank you for that. And well, we'll definitely be in touch. So
For sure.
great. So on to happier announcement. Well, actually, no. Before we move on, that means we also have an opening, right? We have an opening on the team, and we basically always have an opening on the team. Like as new stuff comes in, we kind of like always can use new people that will work on that with us. But we also can't grow to an unlimited team. But now it's quite clear that we have an opening, right? And just before here, someone maybe said like, "Hey, George has been doing some great stuff. Maybe, you know." So I don't know. This is just putting George on the spot. So we haven't talked to him at all. But George, you're there in the chat. Maybe this is something for you. If you're watching this, of course, it might be something for you as well. Get in touch. You probably can find, I think the Twitter handles for most people are in here. Reach out to us and we'll figure out some process or how to make it work, or tell you a little bit more about what it actually is. It's not like only party, only fun stuff. There's also some stuff that we kind of like expect in return, right? So it's not super formal. It is super fun, but it's not all fun. It's all fun. How do I say this? It is all
It's mostly fun.
Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say here, right? So that's the story right now. If there's something that you want to do here, please reach out. All right, then happier announcements. Vlad, I've been talking enough for now. Vlad, can you tell us a little bit about the version 5 of the community toolkit .maui? Because there is a couple of big things that you've been adding here. So tell us about it.
Remember the last meeting I told that version 4 was the best version ever? Yeah, because we have a lot of bug fixes. So version 5 is much better because we have much more fixes. We have and even much more features that we added. So file saver and folder picker are the first one that adds. So you will never see exception if you don't want to see it. It's now much easier for you to just check if operation was successful or not with file saver result and folder picker results. Also, semantic order view brings better accessibility features for you. Probably Gerald help me what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah. So the semantic order view is about so it's an invisible view. So it's more like a container, and you put controls in it, and it helps the screen reader to decide the right order, right? So if you have like full use of your eyes, which luckily I think we all have, you can see visually what's going on, right? So you have this nice title, but maybe you have a designer and that says like, no, the title has to be on the bottom. And that doesn't make sense if you're visually impaired and you can't really see the nice design, right? So this helps to define a different order than the visual order, which will help the screen readers go through all the controls in a more logical way that helps the visually impaired to, have more sense with what's going on here. So that's that one.
Thank you. Also, for state container, we remove animation as a default behavior, but you can still apply it using the new methods three new methods: change state with animation. So if you still need it, you can use animations, but yeah, because this is a major changes version 5, so some code maybe not work from version 4. So just read documentation how to update to the latest version. And of course, a lot of bug fixes. You can find all information here in highlights. Yeah, one note that Expander now works in collection view. So
yeah, that was a big one too, right? We needed a fix in .NET Maui, so we made that happen. Then we could put in the fix in our side, and now we have support for collection view. That's how we roll. That's how we do it. So amazing release.
Yeah, the last but not least, email validation behavior now has a much better performance because of generated regex. Thank you, Brandon, for bringing this feature to us.
No problem. I think I opened that PR back in like October. And just I don't know regex.
Better later than never.
No one does. No one does.
About like, why aren't you doing this in regex? Like, it was like, oh, well, because I don't know how, but
each time I have to relearn.
Well, there is the famous saying, isn't there? You try and solve a problem with a regex, and now you have two problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I also want to highlight, Vlad mentioned this breaking change where we created a new API, a new method called change state with animation for state container. This is actually really cool because Vlad actually added the ability for you to use custom animations now. So if you had been using state container, if you had been using state container with the default animations turned on, you'll see this as a breaking change. But this actually now gives you the ability to, instead of just using that default fade animation, which is still there, we do still have that as the default when you call change state with animation. If you want to make a custom animation, you'll now see a couple overloaded methods that you can call where you can pass in your own animation. So we have an example in the sample app where it animates, where it shrinks down, changes state, and then springs back to life with the new state. So go crazy, share with us whatever custom animations you're able to come up with. But we really think this is the better way to implement it than we initially had it. So apologies for the breaking change, but we've given you some new features. And yeah, ultimately, we probably shouldn't have animated by default in the first place anyways, because when animations get canceled or things get disposed, exceptions happen. And the tough thing for us was we didn't know what to do. Like we couldn't handle those for you. So, we didn't know what state you wanted to be in if something got canceled. But now everything should be better. So try it out. Let us know.
And even if you didn't need animation at all, you can now use state container without animations.
Exactly. Who needs animations? Gradients are much better. I don't know. So Media Element also has a new version, 1.0.2, with mostly bug fixes. The biggest one being, I don't know how far I should get into the technical details here. There was someone who asked under the issue, I remember while I'm talking about this. So especially for iOS 16, there was a weird thing where you had to kind of like connect your video player to like a parent view controller. I did that, I thought, but that scenario kind of like turns out it only worked in whenever you did it in use with Shell, which is the default template for .NET Maui app. So, the chances are that you're using it, but there are people who, are going to do their own thing. So I had to come up with a different way of detecting the parent. And now, again, also with like the same as the animations, it's much better now. It's not even a breaking change. So this is much better and not a breaking change, which is even better. So it should be all good now in all scenarios. I think there was some other bug fix also for Windows. Shoot autoplay had a little bug fix, and I added a minor little feature that you can now mute your video, yes or no. So shoot mute, I think it's simply called, and you can mute your media while it's playing or unmute it, and boom, that's there. Next thing, we already have an open PR. I don't know. I don't see it in the notes because I didn't add it to it. Is I think someone donated the full screen for Android. I have yet to take a look at it because I think it's super hard. So I hope it's, a solid one. I know someone worked at it very hard, so I super appreciate that. if anything. But I hope it's still, it's something that we can take in and it's not too crazy and hacky and whatnot. But I have to look at that. So we're definitely working on the next features here. Brandon, there's also been a release of the Maui markup package.
My favorite. Yeah. So this one continues to build on version 3.0, where we introduced support for typed bindings. If you hadn't seen typed bindings and you use the Maui markup library, go check them out. This is now our high performance recommended way to do your bindings. If you've ever heard of compiled bindings with .NET Maui XAML, this is the same thing. If you dig under the hood, .NET Maui calls these typed bindings, but I think they call them compiled bindings for XAML because the XAML C compiler something, and it probably sounds better. It's more intuitive. But anyways, yeah, check out type bindings because now you can declaratively point to the property in your view model. You can also, if you want to, you can easily add logic here instead of necessarily going through using converters. So it's much more performant. The original way of using iNotify property changed and bindings required reflection. This way it doesn't. And so what we did in version 3.1, which just debuted this week, is we added a couple more overloaded methods. So we were missing support for a method called bind command, where you can bind directly to a command. It ultimately does the same thing under the hood as just .bind, but you get to write a little bit less code, and that's always nice. And then we also added support for iValue converter. To be honest, I just missed this in version 3. And it wasn't until Sean was going through and updating the docs, and because we wanted to update, and we did update the docs to always recommend the new type binding approach. Because again, it's faster, it's more performant, it doesn't require reflection. And Sean goes, hey, how do we do it with, say, a converter from the .NET Maui Toolkit? And I was like, shoot. And so we got it now. So now you can use all your favorite converters with .bind and type bindings, and also with bind command, where you can bind directly to commands. And that includes a little bit of type safety around iCommands and the parameters you pass in. So check these out. These are really, really, really important for all the folks using Maui markup. Highly recommend moving all your bindings to using type bindings. And also, as you do it, if there are any more extensions that I've missed, let me know. There's one I know I missed, and we'll talk about it later. But let me know how we can make this better, if there's better syntax that we can implement, because eventually we are going to deprecate the old way of doing it. We're not going to rip it out from underneath you right away, but in a future version, maybe version 4, we'll mark it as obsolete. And then maybe version 5, I'm just making up numbers here, we'll actually remove that because it should not be needed anymore. Plus, type bindings are just so much faster and so much more performant. So try them out. Let us know what we're missing, because in a couple versions, maybe in a couple years, we'll remove that older way of doing it. But very excited for this. Thank you, Gerald.
All right, cool. Or, instead of just letting us know, join us as a core maintainer and fix it yourself.
That's right.
All right. So next up is the proposal. So in case you haven't missed it, in case you missed it, we've now made our notes also public. So I think the links was already shared in the chat, so you can follow along with all the links that are in here. It's found on the wiki, on our repository, so you can go out there and check everything that we're doing here. So now we're going to talk a little bit about proposals that we have open. First of which is the keyboard manager, which apparently Pedro knows everything about. We're just going to get everything out of Pedro while he's still here.
So yeah, this proposal came from Shane. He asked us to add it on our community toolkit that this API could mature and soonish, maybe .NET 80, I believe, be imported into the .NET Maui itself. So it's basically a set of APIs that allows developers to have control over the keyboard, the soft keyboard, when presented on the mobile device, so you can show it or hide it as you want. And today, there is no API implemented on Xamarin Forms or Maui for that, so there is no on doesn't exist on .NET Maui yet. So he asked us to port this, to implement this on our side, and here we can move way faster than the .NET Maui, so we can release fixes, we can improve that, and port that soonish to the .NET Maui. And yeah, it's basically there is just two methods, I believe, and it's pretty much easy to use.
Well, easy to implement. You can just do that right before you leave. Okay, I will stop joking about it. It's my way to cope with this sadness.
Yeah, actually, this is already implemented, I believe. Like you see, there is the code there because the chain has a kind of workaround library that he's maintaining where he put a lot of workarounds and little helpers for the .NET Maui. So, I mean, the work's pretty much done. No, easy.
Right.
Easy peasy.
Right. Easy peasy. All right. Yeah. So, especially with this keyboard stuff, there's a lot about that been going on, and as it turns out now, it's kind of interesting if you know the backstory. Look, for people were used to working with this a certain way in Xamarin Forms, but it turns out that whatever we were doing in Xamarin Forms, maybe I've told this already. I think I talked about this already a little bit somewhere. I don't know if it was this stream. It was kind of hacky, and we did all kinds of hacky things to make it work like the way that we kind of expected it to work, but that wasn't great for the accessibility. So now we're fixing everything up to be more accessible for you to create more accessible apps, and now we're finding out that the keyboard behavior stuff is way different, just as it works on the platform, because that is what .NET Maui does, right? It just leverage everything on the platform. So now suddenly everyone is like, oh, the keyboard's not working and this is bugs because it worked differently in Xamarin Forms. And you're kind of right. Like, I get if you make the transition from Xamarin to .NET Maui, it feels like a bug because it definitely has changed. But basically, the implementation in Xamarin Forms just wasn't right. So, that takes a lot of kind of like communication, what's going on. We're trying to, make everyone happy. And one of the ways that we're trying to do this, I guess, is through this keyboard manager to give you a little bit more control over when it's going to be shown, when it's going to be hidden. And the toolkit is a nice way to kind of like do a couple of things, see if this is something that people will use, that's of interest, mature the API before we actually put it into .NET Maui. Yeah, Kim, the bug is that it works now. Yeah, exactly. We have that sometimes. That happens. All right, cool. I see Brendan and Pedro. We already heard Pedro. Brendan, do you want to talk about the camera view a little bit? Do you know anything about that, or?
Oh, well, before moving on, Pedro,
sure.
Did you want to have a vote on this?
Oh, sorry.
Because I do have one question on this, because, yeah, I mean, it seems super simple. I'll be honest with you, the first time looking at this, I hadn't opened it up yet. And yeah, looking at Shane's implementation that he shared, it's just two APIs, super straightforward. But yeah, I think the only question I have is, could we also have an interface? Like, is there a possibility for like an iKeyboard manager, something underneath it to share in like the core library? And then if somebody wants to build on top of that, they could. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Because from the implementation, I believe they can abstract like using the iPlatform view handler. And if those lives on the Maui core project, you can put on our core project. Then that will be accessible for all toolkits and other libraries that can implement that. And yeah, and as a interface, you can ship that as a service and allow people to customize the behavior if needed.
Yeah, that was my other thought is, folks that like dependency injection purists, and I get it. I'm kind of one of them. You want to add iKeyboard manager to your constructor instead of just calling the static keyboard manager. So that I think that'll be where it really gets used the most. And then, yeah, it'll be in core if somebody wants it. But cool. Yeah.
I think it's similar
Sounds good to me.
what we have with Essentials, where we have both like interface and static methods with default implementation. Yeah, And also question about it, can we control, make more control what we see on a keyboard, like the target language, maybe something like that? Maybe it will be also like enhancement for it. Or even if
Well,
I talk about, yeah, sorry, just second question
mm,
from me about this one. Yeah, can it be like tension method, maybe target view show keyboard, or should we create it like a keyboard manager?
well, so answer the first question, I would say that could be an enhancement because I honestly I don't know if you can control that from the platform specific point of view, but I mean it's okay if you want to grow up this keyboard manager to implement more APIs and more services there. And the second one about being extension method, I can't recall the implementation to see like if the manager has some acknowledgement around that. If I believe on Android, that is more, it's a little bit more complicated because you have to know the activity context and stuff like that to control, like when you tap outside some area or things like that. You know, the Android is more bureaucratic on that. And if that will be extension method, will be something like the view has the responsibility to control the keyboard behavior, and that is not correct, I would say. But yeah, I would say for the second question, it's not sure if it's a good idea to have extension method on that, but something that we can investigate.
Yeah, Vlad, what would we extend? Like, would we be extension on page? So you could call like this dot show keyboard
Well,
or something like that from content
I
page?
think target view here should be like an input. So page is probably not the right control where you should show keyboard. So I think keyboard manager show should receive only like I input controls. What
Oh
does
wait,
mean for keyboard to show like on page? What what should happen when you open keyboard? So it should be only on
yeah. I guess
where you can type something.
what does it mean to be a target of the keyboard? Because in my head, the keyboard always comes up from the bottom. So
Well,
if you,
if you open an implementation there, so what I saw, it's like a input control where you can focus on it and then show keyboard.
okay, so it'll start blinking the cursor in your text box and show the keyboard. So it'll focus to that control, probably scroll to it if it's off the page.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's probably answering questions from chat. What is a tel keyboard? So probably, and what about tel keyboard? Yeah, so it should depend. So keyboard automatically should understand what type of the input. If it's like a password, if it's a number, or it's just a simple text, email, whatever. So it should automatically understand the context.
The implementation
that's
is actually already an extension method that Shane's created.
ooh.
If you click on that and go into keyboard manager.cs.
Oh, you put it on view. Interesting.
Not entirely sure why I view, because make the point of wanting to receive input.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some scenarios where you
There is
might
an
want to.
I input view, I think it's called in Maui.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be a little bit better, but
However, you can see that visual element has a focus method, but yeah, from my point of view, I don't understand what is a focus on view which doesn't have an input.
I don't know. Would a scroll view scroll to like a button if you call dot focus on it? I don't know.
Well, probably we can just copy, just open this repository and try to run and see with different input views and understand how it works actually. And then
Yeah.
understand, can we use iView if it makes sense, so we can just limit it to I input view or any other interface.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I would also say if we do go this route with just extension methods, then we wouldn't have to worry about interfaces or anything like that. Like this is essentially just adding a method to our UI controls. And also I think if we start with, instead of iView, something more narrow like iInputView, or iInputText, or I forget exactly what it's called. We could always expand that later. We could always expand it out to iView if we wanted to without being a break and change. But going the opposite way would be a break and change. It's just something to keep in mind as we kind of go through V1. It sounds like we got some ideas for V2 with languages. I think that would be cool. Like have a keyboard options parameter that we could pass in and set the language or the keyboard type.
Yeah, not even sure if that's possible on the platform, but definitely a nice thought experiment. I'm not looking
possible.
to build our own keyboard. It's not going to be gonna go all right. Okay, yeah, just looking at the discussion as well, maybe sometimes I can definitely understand why people would ask, like, hey, why is this coming to the toolkit first? So this would definitely be like a breaking change, right? We're adding new stuff into .NET Maui, and it would still be useful to get this in for .NET 7. So I see that's one of the main reasons to get it into toolkit now. We can move a little bit faster, and then who knows what happens for .NET 8 or .NET 9, and we can already move it over. But then we can get it to people at least a little bit earlier than next November. So yeah, good point, Brandon, on the voting. So with all this new information, is there anyone? Let's turn it around. Who wants to see this in the Maui Community Toolkit? Who? Vlad says yes. Pedro, you don't get to vote anymore. All right.
That's nice.
He's like, oh yeah, do it. I don't have to work on it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of which, Pedro, are you championing this? Or actually, we don't have a champion.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
Volunteers for a
I
champion.
approved this one, but like I believe that Shane will work on that soonish, or I can move that. Not sure. I need to talk with him, but I could do this one before I leave completely.
All right. Yeah, let me
Sounds
know. If not, I can champion this one. So let's see.
Mhm.
We'll figure it out.
Cool.
All right. Boom. Done. Next, camera view. Who can talk about that?
Well, I can talk about that one. So, I mean, to give the current status of that, I worked on this one. Should be easy to do a rebase and update the branch because it could be a little bit behind the main branch. And the Android implementation is pretty much done, and it's working. I received a mail from a student. I forgot now his name and where he's from, but he mentioned that he's using this implementation on his work, and it's pretty much working, the Android part. And needs to implement the iOS part from scratch, but all the basement is there to use. The architecture is using a manager class like we do for media element. So that way you have like the handler that is just the camera preview, and the manager takes care about the camera initialization, the take a picture, save a picture, flash, and stuff like that. So we have two areas. So when anyone wants to customize how the camera behaves, they could just override the manager and implement their own stuff there. And the Windows, there is no implementation for that because WinUI doesn't have a camera view control yet there. There is some workarounds, but I would not recommend that because it involves to do some hookups on Win32 APIs, and we probably don't want to maintain that kind of code, calling C++ APIs and stuff like that, and manage some pointers. Doesn't look pretty fun. So I would say that the first implementation will be just Android and iOS, and Android is pretty much done.
Cool. Yeah, just before we started this, we were talking about this as well, also with like Pedro has done a lot of amazing work on this, so how we are going to transition that. So I think the idea was to also put up a little draft PR maybe to show our progress and see where we're at. I think Sean kind of volunteered to also have a look at the iOS part. In the past, I've been looking at some iOS things there, so maybe Sean and I can team up a little bit there. But that sounds like a good idea. To be honest, I'm not sure if. Sure, ideally we want to support all the platforms. Also, Jay isn't here. I don't know how this works on like Tizen stuff. But for Windows, yeah, I feel it's less important because I don't know. I see more use for camera views waving your device around than waving your Windows laptop or full desktop around. So I don't know, but it's not much that we can really do about it as well, right? Do you know, Pedro, maybe is it something that's on the roadmap for like WinUI or not at all? Or
the last time that I checked, there is nothing on the roadmap for that, but like there is one or two open issues that people asking for this feature.
Okay. Well, maybe. I think iOS and Android for this primarily will be good. A lot of people will already be happy with that, I think. So that will be cool. Yeah, so also a lot of work has been done. I think if we're going to vote, everyone is going to be, I have a feeling, in favor of this one.
It's already
I see
been
Brandon.
approved.
It's already been approved. Well, what am I even voting for? See, and I was gonna say, like, this is also something that we had in like, in the Examine Community Toolkit. So this is something that's kind of expected, right? So it should be approved. It should be being worked on, and it is. Then for the next one, we have more Pedro, I guess, because you've also been working on the touch effect, which has also been an interesting project because I think there has been. I don't know, blockers first on the .NET Maui side. Then it was like, hey, we're going to go from effects to behaviors because effect is not really a thing anymore for .NET Maui. So there was a lot of hoops to go through. And now we can basically work on it, but we just didn't have the time to do that yet, right? That's kind of like the recap, Pedro, where are we at with the touch effect?
Yep, that is pretty much correct. And it's pretty much done on Android implementation and Windows One, and needed to port the iOS, the iOS part. This one it's not an easy one, it's a lot of code, and Andre was the one that ported that to us from on the community, on the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So there is a little bit of working in understanding the code and converting. Sorry for my dogs, probably a cat chasing around. And so there is a pretty work in trying to understand the code and converting that to effect to a behavior point of view. But most of the part is already done, and I believe it's pretty much straightforward. The missing parts will be like some changes that we need to do during the code review to address to make it looks like more our new style of the things.
Right. Okay, cool. So we're making nice progress on this one. I foresee a lot of cool features coming to the toolkit near you in the foreseeable future, so that's amazing. This one is probably approved as well because we've been doing a lot of work on it, and it's also one that's coming from the Xamarin Community Toolkit, so I guess everything is already official for this. We are just letting you know this is being worked on, and it's coming. Sean, finally, I get to hear from Sean.
Real quick,
Pop-up service. Yeah,
still on touch effect. So one of the other things, so Sean's volunteered to tackle the camera view, and I was hoping we could get another volunteer for touch effect. And what I was thinking is, as Pedro is rolling off, Pedro, you could open up a draft PR with all the work you've already done, and then Sean can take over the work for camera view, and then I want to see if anybody wanted to volunteer for touch effect. It sounds like, Pedro, did you say it's just iOS that's still remaining?
Yep, just. I mean, it's just because we'll be the from zero to hero. Like there is nothing on iOS implemented, but the code is on the Xamarin Community Toolkit repo. So it's a matter of copy and paste and organizing the code to to work on Maui side.
All right. I have definitely some other things to do, but I can take a look at that one, I think. So.
Well, I was just going to say I'm actually just about to put in a pull request for the lazy view, so that so maybe I can move on to this.
I don't know who's this person on our call. Who are you speaking suddenly? No, I'm kidding, kid. We don't hear enough from you. So definitely, if you have some bandwidth for this, definitely take it.
Right on. Thank you, Kim.
Cool. So pop-up service. That was where we left off, Sean.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I don't know where we left it. I don't think we ever got to having an official vote on whether we wanted to proceed with it. But the concept came because people in the docs are asking how we do it with view models. We don't have much in the way of that, obviously, because we're showing something view related. So the idea was to try and abstract away the view information, so you could call it from a view model, but still show a view that is tied to show a pop-up that's tied to a backing view model, but only know about the view model in the view model calling it. If that makes sense. Yeah. So there's a fairly in-depth implementation there. I may have converted that across to something in a branch already that's working. I just don't have any tests at the moment. That's the challenge, I think. But I think there are pop-up tests. So if we do decide we do want to go ahead with it, then I can take what the pop-up stuff does and convert that to some tests.
Yeah, so basically what this right, like the pop-up now you really have to do like, hey, var pop-up, new pop-up, pop-up.show, right? And that's something that you have to use the navigation service, right? So that's something that you would do from your page, which is kind of like breaking the MVVM pattern, and this would wrap that into a service that you can dependency inject. So Brandon is happy, and you can use that from your view models, right? So that's going to be much better.
Yes, precisely. And the solution also then allows you to have dependencies in your view models and your
right
pop-ups as well if you need it, and it'll resolve those for you. So it relies on using the service provider to do the resolution of creating your new instance. Obviously, and the expectation is we're only ever going to provide add transient as an extension method, because the pop-up gets disposed when it's closed, so a singleton would be a very bad idea.
Probably. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I hear only good things. Anyone have any questions, concerns?
My original concern was the fact that it's MVVM focused, and we're not strictly an MVVM toolkit, but
Maui is. Like,
yeah, I'd say this is just a little helper. It's not like a MVVM framework thing, you know.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
it's true.
fine.
It's not a binding or something like that.
It's more like a supporting thing, right? Like we're wrapping the thing into a service so that you can use it. You can use it with MVVM. You can also use it with completely different things, I imagine. But yeah, it's gray area. But I think we're on the good side of the gray area with this. So.
Yeah, one thought I just had, Sean, is I love this usage syntax. I think once this is implemented, and then we update the docs, this would make a lot of sense to people. Like, oh yeah, pop-up service dot show pop-up async. Probably makes a little bit more sense than how we have it now, where we have an extension method on content page, and you say like this dot show pop-up, which also makes sense, but in terms of discoverability, probably wouldn't be top of mind for people. But yeah, my thought is, what if we also update our, what's that called? The app builder extensions file to automatically add pop-up service to the I service collection. So kind of like I equated to.
There is an iPop-up service interface, and it is registered. I have added that, and actually a question I was going to ask,
even better,
probably in the pull request review side of things, if that is the right approach. or
Yeah,
whether we
that's kinda
follow
what
the
I was
more
thinking is-
essentials way and have a static property
Yeah.
where you can register if you want to, or whether you just want to use it statically. The complication I have found, though, so it might push towards your suggestion, is because the pop-up service itself has a dependency on the iService provider in order to be able to resolve the pop-up. The static
Oh,
approach is a
yeah.
challenge. So actually, what you've said is probably the easiest.
Yeah, and I kind of think of it in that manner. I don't know if anybody uses iDispatcher in their apps. I use it everywhere, but Maui automatically adds iDispatcher to the service collection for me, so I don't have to worry about remembering to add that. And it's really nice because I just slap it into my view models where I know I shouldn't be using it, and it just automatically appears for me. And I think that would help. Doing this similar thing for pop-up service would make it super, super easy for folks. And I don't know if it's even worth, but we could add a iPop-up service too. If we're talking dependency injection, MVVM, inevitably somebody's going to look for an I anything and probably complain that it doesn't exist. But
It does actually exist on my branch. It just doesn't exist. We're all good.
Even better. Cool.
Should we be consistent in terms of what we register? Not should we in that case add, for example, iFile saver also to dependency injection? Because it may be not clear for people what is registered or not. I believe from my point of view, we should add everything that we have. Or not.
I don't know if we should add everything, because that seems like a lot, but this one feels like, and I really have nothing else other than this it feels right to add it in by default, whereas iFile saver, that seems really specific, but that's a good question. I don't know, I hadn't thought about that.
There is an argument for a level of consistency, isn't there? If we're registering something, maybe we should register everything. I don't know if it provides any overheads in terms of doing that.
Also, when we register it, it immediately creates a new instance of pop-up service, so it's the additional call for startup for memory. I understand it's pretty small, just create a new instance of pop-up service, but it also takes some time, some memory. I don't know if it's critical for application because to create only one instance, but well, it depends.
Yeah, that is a good point. DI definitely has some overhead. I would hope that they do lazy loading to where the DI container doesn't instantiate anything until you call it, but I don't know if that's the case. And yeah, I guess if we add everything, it could slow down folks' apps. Good points. All right, I'll back away.
Yeah, but I guess
I think one of the blog posts in terms of suggesting how to boost performance detailed around whether you could lazy load or whether you could provide the way of creating it rather than registering it straight away and it would create an instance.
Oh, cool.
I'll make a note to have a look at that on this proposal if we go in ahead to see if we can optimize that.
All right. Yeah, we're going. Oh, that last thing.
Yeah, sorry, just a tiny question about it. Can view and view model can different lifetime? For example, view model can be singleton and we pass it to different view. Maybe we can add also a parameter like show pop-up async with a view and view model parameters of the method, not generic one, just in case, so people can just display and reuse the same view model for different views.
I'll take that one step further. Do we need a view model? And not saying that this is bad, but should we have another method that just says add transient pop-up that only takes in the pop-up?
We could.
That's still valid, right?
Yeah.
My pop-up's not bound to anything. It's just going to show some text.
And then you'd still get the beauty of, if your pop-up had dependencies, you'd get that resolved for you. So if you had the iDispatcher in your pop-up for some reason, then you would get that for free. So yeah, there's value there.
All right. Some more food for thought. Is this then something that we want to think on a little bit longer? Do we want to vote already? What are we going to do? The concept as a whole, is that something that we want, I guess?
Yeah, I think we could do a vote. We have yet to get a no vote on any proposal. So, I mean,
please don't make me the first.
Sorry, Sean.
I didn't mean to say I am for moving forward with this, but yeah, I think adding in maybe add transient pop-up that just takes in a view, doesn't require a view model. Great. Vlad's point about different lifetimes. So if view model wants to be singleton. To be honest, I don't know why you would do that, but I mean, I could see some scenarios. But I think maybe that could be the next iteration. So we figure out a way to do it like this, where everything's transient, because then folks can use it. And the only downside to not having the ability to keep the view model as a singleton is just we'll reinitialize it for you every time. But I don't think that would be a blocker, if you know what I mean. Like, I think that'd be a nice feature to add, but I don't think anybody would be blocked if you can't use the view model as a singleton, at least not in my small, narrow understanding of how people use pop-ups.
So actually, I think I don't know. There is a show pop-up async method that you can pass in the instance of the view model as well in that proposal. But I don't know, that wouldn't necessarily fit with how you register it. I think if you scroll down to the next, you can pass in the instance of the view model to show pop-up async, so you could have resolved the view model already, and therefore it's only going to resolve the pop-up for you, show you the pop-up, throw the pop-up away, but you could retain the view model for the next time you want to show the pop-up. Because some use cases people have suggested is they want to re-show the same pop-up again, but we can't because it's been disposed. But if they hang on to the view model instance, they can call show pop-up async again. It'll create them the new view, but it won't create them the new pop-up. The new view model. That doesn't solve the singleton instance, but they can retain the instance themselves as a developer. So
yeah,
partially.
I think as long as folks are not blocked, then I'm comfortable moving forward. But if there's something like there's no way you could do this, then it would definitely need to go in V1. But yeah, I think there's some creative workarounds if somebody does want to go that route.
I'm more than happy to revisit some of these points and come back with a more in-depth proposal if that's what we'd prefer.
I mean, we haven't voted yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards. It sounds like you have a draft PR ready, and kind of iterating on that. Just since we could iterate on this proposal a lot, but it sounds like a lot of things are already done in the draft that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, because I'd knocked it up as a blog post because people were asking how they do it. So it's like, well, here's the code you can use. But it's like, well, we could just provide it for them. So it was written for anyway, so it's not going to be thrown away even if we don't put it in the toolkit.
Cool. Yeah, I guess let's just we already made a lot of plans. We tend to do that. So I guess we just vote for this maybe as a concept and then start small, because I think like you said, Brendan, we never voted no. So we're just happy people. We want to have it all. And also definitely leaning towards like, yes, right. Like this is something that we want to have. There's lots of possibilities, lots of ways to do it, lots of variations, but as a concept, I say definitely yes. And then for the concrete implementation, let's come up with a plan where we start small and see where we end up with all the things, basically. So is that all right with everyone? Is there anyone that has objections to do this? Is anyone voting no?
Sounds
See if
great.
you're paying attention. If someone is doing like, yeah, I see.
I thought
I see.
Pedro might go out in a blaze of glory. No.
No. Table flip. Yeah, so technically we're on time. Brandon, was there, because we totally, I see there's some other things, PRs, discussions. Is there anything that you want to talk about for the markup? Do you want to get the last discussion out of the way for Pedro?
Well, let's just real quick. Is everybody comfortable moving on? I know we're over an hour, but
good.
if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, let's keep rolling then. This one down here, Gerald, will be another vote. So I'd like to knock that one out. But yeah, if everybody's able to keep moving forward, then we could chat about maps and NuGet versioning. This is
yeah. If we don't make it like another hour, then it's going to be fine. Then I'm fine with finishing it. But sure, let's go and see where we end up. In that case, let's just move forward. Vlad, you're going to say something about Windows maps, which I'm technically assigned to, I think. So what are you going to say?
Yeah, I just want to say it's still in draft, and it's .NET 7 here for 4 months. So people waiting for it. And as for proposal here, I see that we technically want to add it as a web view for Windows only. Maybe how should it be implemented? Should be like what is the time when we can add it? How it can be? It is a separate package, because currently for implementation, it's still targeted for .NET 6. Maybe we can move forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or are we moving forward with it?
So I've been wanting to get back to this, but then Media Element got in the way, so I finished that first, and now I was gonna pick up this as my kind of like next bigger project, which I haven't done already, which I haven't done yet, basically, for a couple of reasons. One, I've just been super busy, and two, I haven't been checking on it like super frequently. But my feeling is that there's not as much people waiting on it as the Media Element, for instance. So that's kind of like also like, where is it in terms of priority? Because I was actually hoping that this PR, I thought it had a lot more. I thought it was basically ready, but it shows the basic map, and it doesn't really have things like adding pins, doing all the things that we now currently have in .NET Maui map. So there's definitely still some work that we need to do here. So yeah, if you're seeing this and you definitely want this, need this, let us know. But I can at least, I was supposed to work on this, so I should definitely have a look at like, where are we at? Do I need to update this? How much work is that going to take? Do I have a feeling on how much work is going to be to add the missing features here? And then see if we can correlate that to have some indication of how many people are actually waiting for this, and see if it's like worth it for us to actually bring it home, or maybe put it in the freezer for now.
Yeah, great. And also I saw a last video about maps. It was a Google Maps. Maybe they have a Windows implementation for it, or it's also for Android and iOS. Maybe you know.
You know the Google? Do you mean the Google Maps I did the video on the other day on my YouTube channel that you could subscribe to right now if you're watching this? Okay, yeah. No, that's only iOS and Android, so that's not Windows, unfortunately. So that's that. Let's just push on that one. I will do a little inventorization there and see what's up with that. Vlad, we didn't hear you that much. So do you have anything to say about this base version? Do you know anything about that? I know Sean has been working on it mostly, but Vlad, I want to hear you talk a little bit as well.
So this issue proposal came from community who were in discussions where they want to see nightly packages, like a NuGet package, to have a version the same, at least the same as we have publicly in NuGet org. because when we released version 2, then Visual Studio suggests that as a newer version instead of nightly build, which always points to the version 1. So idea here to update our base version of our package, which we have in nightly builds, to the same version which we have publicly in Nugget, but plus 1, let's say. So currently we have version 5. Let's say nightly build can be 5.1 or 5.01. And yeah, there are different ways how we can implement it. Technically, in these pull requests, it just set our base version to 99. But Sean, moving with better implementation using Git versions. So Sean, can you tell more about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the community, the contributor, tried to solve the issue, but we had the issue of we'd always have to keep maintaining this base version, and it looked like we could potentially use a NuGet package to hopefully do most of the work for us. So I've grabbed Git version, which is a tool that is designed to walk the tags that we currently have on the repo and determine what the next version should be based on the change. So if the test I've done now is I've got the change and I'm doing it under the pull request. So it now generates 5.0.1 hyphen pull request, the number of that pull request, and then the number of commits on it, which looks good. And then the complication is then to work out how we automatically version media element as well, because we've got different versioning under the same repo. Which we can do with prefixes, which I know we're possibly not so keen on. It seems that it doesn't look for suffixes, and if you don't have a prefix, so if you just a number, so 5.0.0, which we have at the moment, that number seems to always be considered in the version generation algorithm that it has. So the only way to get media element versioned correctly is I had to rename all of our existing tags to have a prefix. So
is it automatically receive tag git tag, or we can somehow pass it as a parameter, for example, to this git version plugin?
Pass it a git the tag. It's all calculated off the tags on the repo. So when it builds it does.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe we can like create a PowerShell, let's say PowerShell script where we use git version, the git tag. We receive all tags and then add prefix v to it and just pass it as a parameter to the same version just to use this version automatically. Or even with this, we can, well, probably technically we can just don't use git version at all, maybe, and just parse it with a PowerShell automatically and use our git version, understand what is the latest version.
We can go to some level of doing our own version generation. That's for sure.
Well, I think it's important to keep, like, just to zoom way out, kind of ignoring implementations. The reason this got brought up was for folks who don't know, you can actually download, or every PR generates a NuGet based off of the new code in the PR. So you can come into our Azure pipelines. You can eventually click on one of them, view more details on Azure pipelines, which shows you all these results. And under the published artifacts here, you can download the NuGet packages that are automatically generated. And the reason this came up is it generates a NuGet package for Community Toolkit, Community Toolkit.maui, Community Toolkit.maui.core, and Community Toolkit.maui.media element, which is great. But the problem folks were having is they import just Community Toolkit.maui into their app. And if I share, let's see, I think I have to share my entire screen to show what happens here. When we open up this NuGet folder, then you can see these two are here. And actually, thanks to this pull request, this has been updated. But normally these are just version
Sorry, we still
1.
don't see your screen.
Oh, boom. Look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is the NuGet package that I downloaded. This pull request just manually updates the version, sets it to 5, which we, like Sean mentioned, we would then have to manually update every time we released. But yeah, the core problem was this is normally something like 1.0.0 dash something something, and it references the core package, which is also something like 1.0.0. And if you only add in the community toolkit.maui NuGet package to your app, because it has a dependency on core, NuGet goes, oh, I need to search online for community toolkit.maui.core version 1. And so you install this preview NuGet package that you downloaded, then NuGet automatically adds version 1 of core, and then all of a sudden nothing works. So that was the problem that users are hitting. And so what our thoughts are is if we make this version higher, so this could be version 100, and it's going to look for core version 100. This is just extreme, just to show you an example. Well, core version 100 doesn't exist on NuGet. So you install this NuGet package. NuGet tries to search itself, the public NuGet packages for version 100. It can't find it, and it fails. And hopefully then the developer realizes, oh, yeah, that's right. I also have to bring in this downloaded NuGet package for core 2. So yeah, what Sean's been working on is doing this versioning automatically. So it'll just be 1 above our latest version. So it's not super strange to see this version 100. But yeah, I think that is the core issue we're trying to solve with this PR. And so circling all the way back, Sean, you're saying you got it working, but it'll always version off the latest release or the biggest number latest release, I think.
Yes, yeah. Actually, your screen there showed it. Is the fact that media element had 5.0.1, and that's because I haven't forced push the tags up to the repo. So it's calculated that media element would be 5.0.1 because it's automatically incrementing the patch in the next set of change because it's saying that's the next release.
Right.
We can then actually
you can actually
control those which component of the version is incremented as well based on commits or branch names. So if you're creating a major change, it would bump up to 6 already for you. And the point being is that it would generate the versions all ready for us to ship straight to NuGet. So actually, in theory, this wouldn't just solve the nightly build; it would solve releasing as well.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that second part. But my thoughts on the first part is if it just bumps, like if our PR NuGet packages are all have a higher version than anything we have on NuGet, then that at least solves that problem Des were hitting where NuGet would automatically pull down version 1 of core. So I'm happy moving forward with that approach, at least in like a first iteration. And then, yeah, I didn't know we could also use it for versioning, and maybe that could help Gerald when he makes releases, or maybe it doesn't. And I don't know. I don't remember all the steps Gerald has to do to go through that. But yeah, it seems like you've got the fix in place for at least the first problem.
I've got it working locally at least, yes. It's always that test, isn't it? It's once you get it up to the server as to whether it's going to give you the same behavior. And that I think that would be agreeing a tag structure. So if we have if we are happy with prefixes for the toolkit, and the core is always going to be versioned with the toolkit, is that correct? It's just media element that's different.
Yep.
And it doesn't really I don't really care what the tags look like, right? I mean, we're gonna like the prefix has to come off for the actual versions that get released to NuGet because it can't figure that out. It can only work with suffixes, so that's the thing. I don't really care what the local tags look like. So.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's just a little identifier for the tool to then
Right.
say, well, this is a version number that I'm going to consider in my calculation for the next thing that's
Right.
next version.
Okay, yeah, I don't know about all the details with the Git version, but yeah. So to Brandon's kind of question, what I have to do, I wish I could tell you it is super complicated to do this release, and I'm like sweating and but I basically just go to GitHub, say, hey, I want to have this new release. I come up with the tag version thingy, then everything starts rolling, and I approve in the Azure DevOps pipeline, and that's it basically. So that's a good thing. It works. But yeah, there are some places where I do some magic with like the version numbers to also now take off the suffix for the media element and that kind of stuff. So we could definitely do something with that Git version to do it there as well, because one of the things that we also want to do is that came up just before this stream is that we, for the CI pipeline, we don't really have the separate versions for the media element and then the core package, right? So that's something that we can obviously fix as well. We just need to put in a little bit of time to actually do it.
Well, actually, I think if we solve the tags, it might just work.
Right.
If you look at what Brandon had downloaded, it had those NuGet packages via Git version because it had stuck the pull request suffix on the end. So if we solve the tags, then that might solve that problem. Or remove the need to do
all
it.
tags, or it's enough to update only the latest one.
No, it's not. Sadly, I tried that. I had to walk back all the way to basically anything that's lower than the current media element, which is 1.3. Is it? No, I think I stuck that in as a test. 1.0.2. So anything that's higher than that, if it doesn't have a prefix, it gets included because it says it's higher.
Definitely 5.1 for media element for nightly builds may work because it's a higher version. So it's probably not critical until Carol releases version 6 and Community Toolkit remains version 5.
I'll tell you what. It sounds like we're super close. Basically, we just need to figure out this kind of last part and how the CI pipeline works with releases and Gerald's workflow. Gerald, if you have time, could you team up with Sean and maybe do some pair programming together for? I imagine you could probably knock it out in an hour or so to say like, oh yeah, that'll totally work for me. We tweak this and that'll work, and then I think we'd have it.
How do tags work? Tags we'd have to modify for the whole repo, wouldn't we? It's
retroactively, yeah.
Yeah.
But we could just kind of change the process going forward. But yeah, why don't you guys get together if you can find an hour to do some pair programming together, test out some things, see what breaks, see what we need to fix. Since Gerald's so close to or most familiar with how all the releases and pipelines and stuff like that works.
Let's do it. All right. Then we have two more things. Yes, two more. We have the discussion, but is that a smart thing? So maybe we should. Yeah, let's go with the discussion. Who cares? Pedro, we should be less aggressive with disposing our controls. What's that all about?
So we came with the assumption from this, like the Xamarin Forms did, that we should be very conservative about memory and disposing our views and services and whatever right after the usage. But the .NET Maui team and framework took another path from the Xamarin Forms, because from the Xamarin Forms it was very common to see errors like you were trying to access and disposed object exception. You see that all over the place, because the Forms was very aggressively on disposing things. And to make that work like Maui does, I would say that you should be less aggressive with dispose and the disconnect handler as well. And what the Maui does is the same thing that media element does as well. Like let this to the user to control when he wants to clean up the resources of that control of or that services. So on the Maui, on the media element, for example, you have to call the disconnect handler by yourself because we don't know when the user will not want to use that view anymore. So, for example, the pop-up view, we have been like users complaining about the pop-up is already disposed as soon as the pop-up is dismissed, and sometimes they want to reuse that instance, but they cannot use anymore because we disposed of everything, and they have to create a new instance to use that. So in some when you talk about disposing and stuff like that, that could be very heavy. So a performance hit. So the good approach here is to let the developers to choose when they should dispose the controls, and that will allow them to reuse the controls, and that will be alive for a long period of time. And from what I saw on the Maui, the garbage collector still can grab those items, even if they needed to call the dispose methods there. The garbage collector can handle them if there is no reference for that, but they will leave a bit longer than usual. But it's kind of safer or reusable in such a way. This will be a breaking change because developers will not expect those objects to live longer because we dispose them as soon as possible. But that could improve usability and will be like in sync with how the Maui works those days.
So just to make sure I understand, you're saying the garbage collector will still eventually collect it. It just isn't immediately collecting it. So we don't necessarily risk a memory leak or anything like that. Is that right?
Yep. As if there is no other like strong reference holding that type, the garbage collector will be able to collect that at some point. For example, on the dispose documentation, we have like that finalizer partner, and this because at some point, if the user forgets to call the dispose, the finalizer will run at some point, so you can call the dispose inside the finalizer. So in other words, the garbage collector will collect that object. I know that the .NET Maui has some unit tests around garbage, sorry, around memory leaks. So to make sure that even if we do not call the dispose, and I mean we as a mobile developers don't call the disconnect handler or the dispose method, at some point that controls will not be leaking on the memory, like the picker that has event handlers attached, or even I believe buttons was another one that there is some unit test around that.
So basically, if all references are dropped, but somebody doesn't dispose it, eventually there'll be enough memory pressure that the garbage collector will come and knock it out, right? Yep.
Yeah, something like that. And also, it's always a good practice to add to the docs to the developers, like, hey, remember to call the disconnect handler. Like, I believe that we did that for the media element. Like when you will not use the player anymore, call the disconnect handler to clean up the resources.
Cool. Yeah, I think the only recommendation I have, and I love moving forward with this because if it's what .NET Maui is doing, we should probably follow that same approach, especially since our goal is to get these controls like Popup promoted into .NET Maui. So it'll make that whole process easier. Yeah, and so I think the only thing I would recommend is, Pedro, like you said, .NET Maui has a bunch of unit tests to make sure that this does work properly. Let's add probably copy paste that unit test in for something like Popup to make sure that when we implement it is doing what we expect it to do, and just so that we don't miss a line of code somewhere and accidentally introduce a new memory leak. But yeah, I think to me this makes a lot of sense.
So would this be something you would just going forward, or are you proposing we go back and change all the existing controls?
Good question.
I
I would say.
It's like I'm out of here.
Well, I would say that the first step could be tackling the most problematic controls, like the pop-up is one that people are complaining about, that they cannot reuse the instance. So that could be the first one, because we will have a lot of users testing that new behavior, and probably they will report the issue. You know our users, they will yelling that something's broken there. And that will also do extra work on Sean, because now on his pop-up service he can add the singleton implementation on API for the pop-up service. So that will start working.
Yeah, and I think if we have unit tests implemented, I don't see the harm in doing it everywhere. As long as we can test and verify, then yeah, I think retroactively going back and changing how we dispose or don't dispose is fine. Because if a user is already using the control and they're already calling dispose manually, this won't affect them. And any user that's not, they shouldn't see any problems. But I think, as long as we have the tests in place, then I'd be comfortable just doing it everywhere.
Sounds like a plan. I will take a look on the test, because I needed to double check if is running on like in the same instances of unit tests that we have, that is the .NET whatever, without the target framework, of if they're using the device runner to run like on .NET Android and .NET iOS and .NET Mac Catalyst, because that could introduce different behaviors on the tests.
Good point.
Yep. Kim, were you going to say something? Last thought?
Nope. I was going to ask a quick question on the pop-up service then, if that's right. If we're showing a pop-up from a view, we're saying, show me this pop-up. We don't actually create the pop-up, so the developer isn't going to hold a reference to it. Surely there would still be some value in us tidying up as soon as it's been hidden. I mean, we would have to know the lifetime registration, though. That complicates matters. But if you have added a pop-up as transient, there is no point in leaving it in memory if you know you've finished with it. I don't.
True. Yeah, I'm following you. So, like in the service, you would call dispose after. I think that would make sense, but it also sounds like you wouldn't necessarily have to.
You wouldn't have to, no, but if you know you're finished with it, it's still better practice to tidy it up, isn't it, rather than leaving to the point of getting the memory pressure that forces the garbage collection. I mean, obviously, a pop-up is probably most likely not going to take up much memory, is it?
All good points, all famous last words, right? Should be fine.
We'll do the testing, won't we?
What's the worst?
Unit tests are going to help.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Then last thing before I'm going to get to bed, there was a proposal which Brandon knows everything about, which is about the markup stuff with gesture extensions.
Yeah. So let me share this in our chat first. Proposal. I can't talk and type at the same time, but long story short, this is another continuation of adding type binding support everywhere, and also recommending type binding support be used everywhere. And again, this is Sean may or may not have known that he brought this to my attention, but we have a couple more APIs that need type bindings. So in this case, these are our gesture bindings. So we already have existing methods called bind click gesture, bind swipe gesture, bind tap gesture. And right now, the only way to do it is using the old way with reflection. So this just introduces type bindings for those. And then I think after this one, so let's assume this gets released in version 3.2, that we'll be done implementing type bindings, at least upgrading everything to type bindings. We can always add new ones. But yep, opened up this proposal. I did go ahead and open up a draft PR too, because while I was looking at it, I was like, I can knock this out real quick. And then, hours later, had the code. But yep, just wanted to bring this to a vote so we can implement type bindings for our bind gesture methods.
Sounds good.
So should we do a quick show of hands? Raise your hand if you approve gesture extensions with type bindings.
Sounds good to me. Oh, Pedro is hearing us again. He was saying in our private chat that he couldn't hear us, but now he's there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was it. And then I'll keep pushing forward with this PR now that we got it approved.
Great. Well, Pedro reset the modem just in time for us to say goodbye for this month. We have went over time, but we finished everything that we wanted to talk about today, so that is great. Yay us. Next time, maybe try to keep it within the hour. Better. All right, thank you so much for joining us. I assume, Pedro, this is the last time. So again, from this place, thank you so much for all that you've been doing, and we hope to see you sometime in the future. Please stay in touch. And for the rest, I'll see you next month together with Jay, who's been joining. Bye, Doc, you as well. I hope to see you sometime. Keep chasing cats. Thank you, people in the chat. George, we'll be hearing from you for the application for our team. And see you next month. Thank you so much.